right, well, welcome everyone. I'm here with Daisy Murillo. She's a software engineer at the New York Times. Hi, Daisy. She's also a graduate of the Promineo Tech Coding Bootcamp, and I just invited her to have a discussion with me about her career progression into software engineering, and she graciously accepted. I want to kick us off with a question about Technolochicas. I see that on your LinkedIn profile, this is an organization that you've been involved in for about 4 years. It's a national initiative of the National Center for Women in Information Technology and the Televisa Foundation, designed to raise awareness among young Latinas and their families about opportunities and careers in tech. I'd love to hear more about your involvement in this organization.
Yes, so I started in Technolochicas when I was a sophomore in high school. That organization came from the NC WIT Foundation, the National Center for Women and Information Technology. They were first, and then out of that group, Ruth Farmer founded Technolochicas along with the Televisa Foundation. And so they started back in 2015, 2016, and they were going around, across the US trying to scout for girls that were Latina, were Hispanic, and they also worked in technology, or they had aspirations to work in technology. So back then I was a sophomore in high school, and I had already heard about the NC WIT Foundation. And through them, I found this group through Janice Mack, actually. Now she works in Arizona Education Board, and she still focuses on technology. But yeah, back when I was a sophomore, they kind of scouted me along with many other girls and other professionals as well in the industry.
So you knew way back when, as a sophomore, you wanted to work in tech.
Yes, I should have probably mentioned that first. So I started in tech, or I got exposed to software back in middle school when I was in 6th grade. My teacher introduced me to robotics, and somebody had to program the robots. Out of 10 kids, 10 6th graders, we had 2 programmers, and I was one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And ever since that club, I knew I wanted to do something with technology. I wasn't sure what exactly, but I knew engineering for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that exposure very early on, that kind of led on into high school. I graduated from 8th grade, went into high school, and then I didn't know anything else. I didn't know the clubs there, or I wasn't sporty, so I didn't join any sports, but I did know the robotics club because I had been in a robotics club in middle school.
Mm-hmm.
So that naturally followed when I went to high school.
What
And
kind of what does the programming look like for robotics? What does that involve?
yeah, so if I remember correctly, in 6th grade, these robotic kits, they were called the Lego Mindstorm robots. And so you would build these robots in Legos, but they had their own block code that you can drag and drop, and it would, execute the commands and make the robot move forward, or you would grab a claw and pick up the ball and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's very similar to Scratch. I'm not sure if it's the Scratch platform.
Yeah,
It's something
little
similar to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost like it sounds, if it's like Scratch, is it kind of like a design for learning? Is that the idea?
Yes. So yeah, it's supposed to be something simple that, elementary kids can work on. It's not actual, like hard lines of code, but it was an introductory to that.
Yeah. So by the time, so you knew when you're a sophomore, you were like, okay, I'm interested in this maybe coding, engineering thing.
Yeah, so I knew that I wanted to do something in engineering. I wasn't sure what exactly. I was thinking either mechanical engineering or chemical engineering or robotic engineering. And when I went into high school, I continued with that robotics club, and I was still the programmer, or supporting the programming team. And then that slowly progressed into this school that we have here in Arizona called Westmec. And they were starting a brand new program at a trade center called the Coding Cohort. It was a very new program, and I knew this was somewhat similar to what I had been doing. So I decided to apply, and luckily I was accepted. It was a 2-year program where we learned PHP, JavaScript, Python, objective-oriented programming, and all of that.
So is that 2-year program was what, after school, or was it in replacement for school?
It was after my high school hours. So I was going to high school from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. And then that program started at like 3:30 to 6:30 every day.
Wow.
Yeah. It was a lot.
That's amazing. Was there any point in that you were like, oh, this is too much, I'm going to give up, or you just loved it so much you wanted to keep doing it?
Yes. So at the end of my 2 years, I decided that coding was not for me.
Mhm.
And I was like, I can't do this anymore. I'm overwhelmed. I'm coding almost every day, or just in front of the computer every day. And I don't know, just something clicked inside me. And I was like, I'm not doing this. I'm going into medicine. I went
Mhm.
into medicine when I was 18, did that for a year. And I was like, you know what? Coding isn't that bad. I actually like coding a lot more than being a nursing assistant and being, in the hospital or in a nursing facility. It's just so, I don't know, it's emotionally taxing. And at
Yeah.
least when you're coding, you're not really dealing with very critically ill people.
Mhm.
Your person is this pedantic machine in front of you.
Mhm.
So, and I went back into coding. So here I am, still in tech.
So that's like brings us to the end of high school. You do this 2-year program. You
Yep.
tried healthcare, medicine, didn't like it. What did I noticed though you did quite a bit of other education. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So when I was in the medical 1-year phase of mine, I went to Grand Canyon University, which they were known for nursing, and I thought that's what I wanted to do. I
Mhm.
went into that. I kind of deviated a little bit, decided it wasn't for me, and wanted to go back into tech. So I started looking for um, programming opportunities, and obviously nobody would hire me because I was 19.
Mhm.
Um, so I thought, if recruiters don't want me, I got rejected from Google at 19, obviously, because nobody's going to take in a 19-year-old. But I started looking at other websites. I ended up on Craigslist, and I found a very small web agency here in Arizona
Mhm.
where they develop PHP websites. And I knew PHP because back at Westmec, I had learned a little bit.
Mhm.
So I applied there. I'm 19 and a half at this point. They take me in. They're like, okay, you know HTML, you know CSS, you know a little bit of JavaScript. I think
Mhm.
we can work with you.
Okay.
So I start working there, and I have to leave, college because this is a full-time position.
Mhm.
So I said, I'm going to make it work. I'm going to work as a programmer during the day, and during the evening, I'm going to attend community college.
Mhm.
And I did that for 6 months. Out of nowhere, I had a recruiter from LinkedIn reach out to me, and she was telling me, we have this job opportunity. It's going to be in Python. I saw that you know a little bit of Python based off your LinkedIn.
Mhm.
She made it sound super cool. It was going to be like machine learning and all this like awesome stuff. And I was like, well, yeah, I'd be interested. It's better than working with PHP daily.
Yeah.
So,
Well, before you
yeah,
go
go
there,
ahead.
can you just talk a little bit about that web agency you were at for 6 months? What was that like? You're 19 years old, just out of high school, basically. I, I'm guessing there's not a lot of other 19-year-old women in this company. What was that like?
Yes, it was very different. It was a small private company, and there was only 4 developers. I think I was the fifth one. They're all men. They're all very experienced, with technology, and they know full stack, and they know front end and back end and all these APIs. And I'm just like, yeah, so it's very different.
So what would
Yeah.
your advice be? Like, it's obviously a male-dominated industry in many ways. What would your advice be to all the women who are listening right now? You know, what advice might you have if they find themselves in a similar situation?
Yes, it is unfortunately a male-dominated field, but one thing that they have to remember is that this field was actually pioneered by women. So if you ever feel, daunted or just you feel like you don't belong, you very much do, because the very first programmer was Ada Lovelace, a woman. And if she doesn't set this great example for all of us, then I don't know anyone better than her. So I think just looking at other role models that are in the field currently or have been in the past, that can really motivate you and, keep you in the field, because I know that a lot of women join and they're like, I like coding, but the environment's kind of not for me.
Mhm.
It's something that it's still a struggle. I think the industry is trying to bring in more diversity and trying to become a more welcoming field, but we just have to persevere and continue. And hopefully your passion is much stronger than some obstacles that we would have to face. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that answer about Ada Lovelace. So if someone didn't know who Ada Lovelace is, could you share a little bit about her?
Yeah, so Ada Lovelace was a mathematician. I'm trying to remember the year that everything took place, but essentially she was one of the very first people to program. Back then, it wasn't considered. They didn't even know this was programming, but it was these instructions that you would feed into a machine, and she was the one to program. So making
Mhm.
her the first programmer to ever exist.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So for all the women listening, this is a woman pioneered field, and you should remember that.
always remember that.
I love that. That's awesome. That's great. So, so let's go back. You did that 6 months at the web agency, and then you were saying, where did we leave off right there?
Yeah, so after that, I was working. I was working during the day, and at night I would attend community college. But I was very active on LinkedIn,
Mhm.
and a recruiter found me, and she was like, "I have this opportunity for you. It's super cool. Would you be interested?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course." I've never interacted with the recruiter, so this was one of my very first times where
Mhm.
somebody's reaching out to me because they want my expertise, or what is this? So I get on a call with her. Now I'm like super accustomed to recruiters reaching out and having these like 15-minute calls and stuff. But yeah, so we get on a call and she's like, send me your resume, send me an email, with these details. And I do the same day. She sends it out to the hiring manager, and he's like, yeah, bring her in for an interview, tell her to like look into like REST APIs and middleware technology, and we'll see how much she knows.
Mhm.
But luckily, since the recruiter had told me, hey, tell you, they're going to ask you questions about SOAP services and REST APIs. I don't know any of this, but I hope this helps you. And I'm like, yes, this definitely helps me because I'm going to Google everything. So
Mhm.
I did. I show up to the interview. They ask me technical questions and such. And the company ends up being American Express, by the way.
Oh,
And I'm
wow.
like, yeah, I'm like, of course I want to interview for them. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Um, Luckily, they took a chance on me and they hired me as a contractor as at first. It wasn't a permanent position. Um, so I was a
So,
contractor.
so
Yeah.
you literally were Googling the topics that were going to be asked of you right before the interview.
Yes, unfortunately that was the case. And I was
But but
very,
but you thought that's fine. I'm gonna just go for this and see what happens.
I just just take the risk. It doesn't, what's the worst that can happen? They say no. I have a
Mhm.
job already. I'm in school,
Mhm.
so I didn't have much to lose. So I researched for like 24 hours and then I went for the interview,
Mhm.
and luckily they said yes. So
They, tell me about that. So that was, you were an infrastructure engineer. That was your
yeah.
title. What does that mean? What is an infrastructure engineer?
Yes, so infrastructure engineers, they're more on the DevOps side. So we're
Mhm.
not really programming on the daily, even though it is uh, essential that you know a little bit of coding.
Mhm.
We more so focused on all of the middleware operations that are happening between the client and the server. So we whenever you're talking about full stack, you have the front end and the back end, but there's something in the middle that connects both of them, and something that supports all of these applications and databases, and your caching system, your firewall. There's infrastructure beneath that supports it. So that's what I was doing when I was at Amex. I was in the middleware piece. I was supporting the transactions that were happening from front end to back end to front end, and that can look like troubleshooting TLS and SSL certificates, or onboarding clients, technically not in the business side, but onboarding clients from different application technologies onto your middleware piece so they can talk to the backend.
Mhm.
um, yep.
Yeah. So that sounded like you were happy to get that experience. Did you continue going to school at night?
Yeah, so I did continue going to school. Unfortunately, I couldn't continue with community college
Mhm.
because they were just like too what's it called? It was too demanding, and I had a better job and I was getting paid like an engineer. So I'm
Mhm.
like, school, it's kind of beneath me, but it's not. School is still very important. So I found an online university that's luckily supporting me throughout the work that I do. So I go to Western Governors University,
Mhm.
and they have an awesome computer science program completely online. So
Mhm.
that's what I do now.
Okay. So you're actively pursuing your computer science degree.
Yes, still.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's great. So, and then what about Promineo Tech? How did that fit into the picture?
So Promineo, I knew that something that I was lacking a skill set. I could feel it. I
Mhm.
needed more programming involved in my life, because as an infrastructure engineer, you're not developing every day. But it's something that I still wanted to do. So I, sought out different boot camps and online certificates, and there's all sorts of education that you can do. I chose Promineo because it was very local, the price was excellent, and they were covering exactly what I wanted: the back end development and learning more with Java.
Mhm.
And it was a great program. I still recommend it to many people. When they're looking for boot camps, I try to recommend the one that I went to. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for doing that. So just so people understand, you were working in this kind of DevOps role, but you weren't coding every day, but you still wanted to move in that direction.
Yes, I still wanted to. Coding is still very important. Being in tech and working as an engineer, you still need to keep up to date with those skills. Um, and just, having a programming language under your belt that you know very well is super
Mhm.
important. Um,
Tell us about the journey from Amex to the New York Times. What did that look like?
Yep. So I was at Amex for 3 years. I worked as a contractor for 6 months, and then they decided to bring me on board as a full time. So I was a full time employee for 2.5 years. The New York Times found me through TikTok. I know, super crazy, but
That's incredible.
yeah.
They found you through TikTok. How did they find you through TikTok?
So I have a TikTok channel that is doing okay. I have 10,000 followers right now.
Okay,
It's
what is your tick? People are going to want to know right now. What is your TikTok channel?
You can find me at Daisy Murray.
Okay.
So that's my user handle.
Yep. So DAISYMURRY.
Muri.
Muri, Daisy
Yes,
Marie. Okay,
close.
great.
Yep. So I started a TikTok channel during the pandemic because I was at home, didn't have much to do.
Mhm,
And I was doing content about tech and just interesting software tools that I would find and technologies like that. I
mhm,
slowly pivoted into tech news,
mhm,
and I started covering, what this startup is doing, what this company, everything ongoing with like Facebook, Uber, stuff like that.
mhm.
And somebody from the New York Times, PM exactly, found my channel and decided to refer me to a hiring manager.
So wait,
And
what's when you
yeah,
say a PM,
oh,
a
a
project
product,
manager?
yes, a product
Project,
manager. Yeah.
okay. So a project manager was just checking you out and said,
Yeah,
you should talk to, you should maybe come work at the New York Times.
yeah, so she didn't say anything to me. She
Yeah.
just saw my account. She
Hmm.
told internally the hiring manager, hey, I found this girl on TikTok. She does software. I looked her up. She's an infrastructure engineer. This is exactly what you're looking for. So the
Hmm.
hiring manager was like, oh, okay, I'd like to get in contact with her. He connected with me through LinkedIn,
Hmm.
and I started talking to the hiring manager, which, like every recruiter call, they're asking you like, what are you looking for in the future? Or what are your plans? What are your goals?
Hmm.
Um, so I decided to take that call, and I still wasn't sure because we're talking about the New York Times. And I'm like, there's no way that the New York Times would want to hire me. Like, whoa. But
Why not?
yeah,
Why would they not want you, Daisy? Why not?
because I still feel like I need that bachelor's degree in order
Mm.
to fully qualify as an engineer. And that's something that we can talk about later, but you actually do not. There's various people who are very skilled that do not have a computer science degree and are very good engineers.
Mhm,
So I now realize that's not the case. I don't need a bachelor's degree, even though it's very important.
mhm,
Um, it's not, it's not in everybody's path sometimes.
mhm,
um, but if you can get it, I think you should definitely go for it, that 4-year plan degree.
mhm.
um, but yeah, so I was talking to the hiring manager, and he started, he was like, all right, let's start the process. I'm going to put you with the recruiter and we're going to start everything from the ground. So I'm talking to the recruiter. The recruiter is like, yeah, I think you're great. We found this team, obviously under that hiring manager that I was talking to.
They knew all along that it was targeted for this team, this one team in particular.
Yeah, they were hiring. They were actively hiring, and it's a brand new team here in the Times.
Mhm,
And their whole initiative is to have a centralized infrastructure for all of the software developers so they can rely on one central unit. Um, so they needed people for that, and they needed infrastructure people. And luckily I was, in that.
yeah.
Um, yeah, so we start from the recruiter. The recruiter is prepping me for the technical interviews because I still need to go through that. She's like,
Mhm,
don't worry, this is just a technical screening. Well, I go through like 6 interviews to get into this team.
mhm.
Um, Even like a full panel of like senior staff engineers, and it was a lot.
Yeah. Well, so let's dig in there. Talk more about that. You did 6 interviews. Were they all technical interviews? Were they a mix? How did you prepare? What was that like? People, I think, would really love
Yes.
to hear that.
So luckily, the recruiter kind of prepped me for the initial technical screening. The technical screening was just 1 hour, and they basically wanted to see, how do you think? How do you process? How do you ask questions when you're facing a problem?
Mhm.
And it's very typical. They asked a leak code problem. I can't mention which one specifically, but you
Sure.
can pick the programming language that you want to solve the coding problem with. I chose
Mhm,
Python. I think it's probably one of the best languages if you're, interviewing technically.
mhm.
Um, so yeah, so I went through that. Luckily, they were like, yeah, you're doing great.
Can you go through like, I know you can't share
Mhm.
the problem itself, but a couple of
Yeah.
questions. Had you ever seen that leak code problem before?
Yes, because the technical interviewer told me you should study easy and medium level leak code questions. So I was
Okay.
going through those questions.
Okay.
Luckily, it was
You
something similar.
you did,
Yeah.
okay, it was similar to one of the ones you had seen. And
Yeah.
then what was it like logistically? How did it, just walk us through how you did the problem?
Yep. So I think first thing is always read the problem and make sure you understand what problem is it that you're trying to solve.
Mhm.
And you can always, clarify that with your interviewers. If you can say something like, what I understand here is that I need to solve X, Y, and Z. And they can either confirm that or they're like, no, yes, or something. So I think that's the first step, just understanding what you're solving.
Mhm.
After that, you're not going to go straight into coding the solution. You should probably, you know, say it out loud, make sure that your steps, everything that you're saying sounds good. And you can always check with the interviewer. I think this is how I'm going to approach it. What do you think? And they can either say, yeah, I think that sounds very good. You should go ahead and, code it out or start, solving the problem, but never start coding right away. That's not
Mhm.
how it would work in your day-to-day job
Mhm.
anyways.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think after kind of have mentally you've solved the problem and roughly how you're going to execute it, you should start actually writing out the code.
Mhm.
But yeah.
So you felt you followed those steps and you felt
Mhm.
pretty good about the experience.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I thought maybe I wasn't able to solve it, because it didn't run successfully the first time. I had some error was happening with it, and but I solved the error, so it did run successfully, but not initially, which I
Mhm.
think is okay. It doesn't have to successfully execute the first time you run. I think there's actually a ongoing joke within the software industry is that if everything runs perfectly the first time, there's something wrong with it.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So you must have felt great after that you got it working.
Yeah, I felt, felt good. I felt like I was communicating enough.
Mhm.
I was trying to really explain what I was doing and hopefully they understood.
Mhm.
After that, I had to do a take home assignment.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
yep.
You want to talk, can you talk about that at all at a high level?
Yeah, so at a high level, the whole task was to see how well you perform with CI/CD pipelines and automating this task that they gave me, which was essentially deploying in different stages. Typically in the industry, you have three stages. You have testing and you have staging, or they call it like quality assurance sometimes, and then production.
Mhm.
So the whole task was take this application and run a pipeline with it, and it has to execute into these three buckets.
Mhm.
So it was not perfect. I do have to admit, I wasn't able to get it into production. But the good thing is that if you're able to get it into the second level, which is the quality assurance kind of staging part,
Mhm.
it should be very similar to production.
Mhm.
So
And all, when you're trying to move the code through those stages, can you
mhm.
talk a little bit about what does the environment look like that you're working with? Are you working in some kind of simulated environment? What does that look like?
So we were working with Kubernetes, and they had set up some Kubernetes clusters for each of the environments. I just had to make sure that they were configured correctly and make sure that the pipeline that I was running, that it'll successfully deploy that application into that cluster. So
Mhm.
that was my task, making sure that it's running in that cluster and it's available,
Mhm.
So
Great.
I hope that's not too technical, but I think
No, it's good. Some people who are listening do want to go to that level. Is that similar to
okay.
what you're doing in your day-to-day job? Are you working with Kubernetes and deploying code?
Yes, we do work with Kubernetes. Yeah, I do have to work with pipelines. So actually one of my current tasks is to develop a pipeline for this other project because they need to start thinking about automating that process. So yeah, a lot of CI/CD pipelines, Kubernetes, Docker. We use Go here, Go, the programming language. I have yet to learn that.
Mhm.
So always learning.
Yeah, what one theme I've noticed for you in particular, since probably sixth grade, you've been learning more and more languages.
Yes, I think that's a skill that all of us need, I think, in the tech industry is you can't stop learning else, you're kind of out of the market. So,
Yeah.
but yeah.
So take us to the end of those six. So you were able to obviously impress them enough to pass these interviews.
Mhm.
Yeah, what did it look like
Yep.
coming on board?
I think you also asked if they were all technical. They're not all technical. Half of them were technical, and the other half was culture fit. Making sure, how do you think? Do you have like a leadership mindset and stuff like that?
Mhm.
They also ask you to give examples that align with their values with the company. So that's something that you also have to prepare for.
Mhm.
But after that, I recently onboarded. I've only been here for like 2 weeks, and I already have tasks to
Mhm.
accomplish. Everyone here is mostly senior or staff.
Mhm.
Some of them are on the road to being principal engineers.
Mhm.
There's a lot of projects here to do. So a lot of work. Out of 5,000 employees at the Times, 2,000 of them are reporters and journalists.
Mhm.
At least 1,000, I think, are in like the business and finance or sales.
Mhm.
And then 800 of us are engineers.
Mhm.
So, and within the engineering department, I'm under the delivery engineering or service delivery, also known as that.
Mhm. Mhm.
But yeah, everything has been going pretty well. Right now they're kind of overwhelmed with what's happening. Obviously, with the news, we have reporters in Ukraine,
Mhm.
and they're in harm's way. So everyone's trying to keep them, safe and make sure that everyone is still, everything's still working and running here.
Yeah,
But yeah,
yeah, it's kind of an incredible time for you to be onboarding with a large news organization with world events that are going on at the moment.
yeah, it's I don't know, it's an interesting point. I think, it's interesting to be entering a company while all this is happening. But yeah.
Yeah, so what is it like working remotely? What does that look like for you in this role?
Yeah, so my position is completely remote. I don't have to go into the office. I think sometimes I have to go to New York for like annual company events, but so far it's been pretty good. I do have a daily routine that I like to follow, wake up, get ready, have breakfast before you sit at the computer, because I think it's very, harmful to be eating and looking at the screen. I don't think you can fully enjoy a breakfast like that.
Mhm.
But so far, everything's been going very well. I do enjoy working remotes just because I get to spend more time with my pets. I have a tortoise. He's outside. He's 4 years old.
Oh,
But yeah.
oh, it would be cool to see your tortoise on the interview, but probably doesn't
Oh,
want to
he's
come
so
in.
heavy. Yeah, he's
Yeah,
like
you
50
couldn't
pounds.
you couldn't pick him. You wouldn't want to pick him up and bring him in.
No, he's oddly shaped too. So it's very hard to, pick that creature up.
So
But
you're
yeah,
you're in Arizona where I am as well. So, and
yes.
in case people are watching us and they're wondering, can you explain why is a tortoise in the desert?
Why is a tortoise in the desert? Because well, the Socata tortoises, they're from Africa, and
Mhm.
they love the heat. So they actually thrive in it. So right now he's actually grazing outside, just enjoying the sun.
Mhm.
But
Is that considered a desert tortoise? Is that what they call a
yeah,
desert tortoise? Okay.
yeah, he's a desert tortoise, so he's outside.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just remember I'm from New York originally, and I've been here maybe 8 years. I was surprised when I came that there were desert tortoises. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, they're land dogs. So that's
Mhm.
what I like to consider them. They're desert
So
dogs.
Do you, if someone wanted to learn more about your desert tortoise,
Mhm.
do you feature your tortoise on your TikTok channel?
Sometimes I do, I think he hasn't made an appearance yet. I think he's only been on Instagram, my Instagram. But
Okay,
I should make some TikToks with Tortoise.
yeah.
But
What are
yeah.
what are some other kind of things you talk about on TikTok?
You'll see videos on, obviously about tech news. I like to showcase a lot of odd technologies that a lot of people wouldn't really, look at or really encounter in your day-to-day job. Like one time, I think I found a programming language, and the syntax for this language is white spaces. So you program with spaces.
Mhm.
So I think that's something that I talked about in a video. Um, but yeah, you can basically anything like generally tech. I don't do any coding tutorials. I don't think TikTok would be the place where people would go for a coding tutorial, but I
Mhm.
think I've seen a very small audience, that does enjoy that. My channel isn't particularly about that.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah,
And what inspired you to start making content on TikTok?
I've always wanted to do tech content, and it was the pandemic too. So I downloaded TikTok, and um, I don't know, it's just something, it was very easy for me, I guess, to follow these TikTok trends, but putting in my tech side into these trends. I think that was the only really differentiating factor there. And TikTok is very easy to, pick up as well. I feel like understand. But yeah.
You talked about your daily routine and you talked about breakfast and the importance of not, eating while you're in front of the screen. I did
Mhm.
have on my list of questions, I'd love to ask, do you have any other tips for maintaining good mental, physical health when your career is mostly in front of the computer?
Yes, it's super important, I think, because in the tech industry, burnout is super real. And I think there's a high number of burnouts working in tech. So some ways to avoid that, I feel like, is through the food that you eat. There's not a lot of people put importance in that, but if you're not eating processed foods, if you're eating something that are healthy, high carbs, I'm not talking about like chocolate or, you know, French fries or stuff like that. I'm talking about like chickpeas or carrots, broccoli, always eat greens too.
Mhm.
I think it's super important because it not only like lifts your mood, but you feel energized to continue throughout the day.
Yeah.
Um,
Do
so
you
yeah,
have
I
do
think,
you have favorite go-to breakfasts or lunches that you really like to come back to?
yeah, my go-to breakfast right now is avocado toast with a grated egg.
Hmm.
So, yep,
Nice.
yep, super good.
Yeah.
Wheat toast with just avocado and boiled egg, but you grate it on the toast.
What do you use to grate the egg?
It's just I think just the cheese,
Hmm.
the little
Like a
holes.
cheese grater? Yeah.
Yeah, you can use that and just grate the egg on top. You should
Yeah.
try it. It's very good and efficient.
I love avocado toast. We buy about 8 avocados a week, and I'm looking over at the bowl where we keep them. There's two left. We're coming towards the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love avocados. And yeah, I agree with you. It's a good idea to, the more healthy I eat, I notice I'm more alert and have more energy. And
Yep.
especially if we're sitting all day, uh,
Yep.
that's good. What about do you have other tips, other suggestions you'd like to share? Probably a lot of people watching this are either, maybe they're in the Promineo Tech bootcamp right now,
Hmm.
and they're just enjoying learning about your journey or your path. And maybe
Hmm.
there's some people who are not yet doing a boot camp, and maybe they're thinking about coding. Maybe they're thinking about getting into it. Maybe they've listened to you and they identify with you and they say, "Oh, Daisy could do it. I think I could do that. I'm interested." What kind of advice might you have for other people that want to follow that are inspired by your story?
Yep, I think whenever you first go into the software industry or you first encounter coding, it can be very intimidating. And sometimes, you can feel scared or, um, it's just not, you think, it's not for you, you can't make it in this industry. I think you definitely can. I think you always have to remember, what if it turned out better than you ever imagined? So I think always don't knock it until you try it, risk it. I know sometimes it is difficult if you're a provider for your family and you have dependents. It's just a period of time that you have to dedicate and try to transition. Um, Sometimes it won't be easy going into tech and coding, but it'll definitely be worth it. So
Yeah, that's awesome. I love it. Um, is there any place you would like to invite people to follow you? TikTok, perhaps?
yeah, I think
Facebook?
if you want to follow me, you can follow me on TikTok, Daisy Murray. I have, you know, a small audience there. So you can just DM me, or if you want to reach out to me, you can always email me too. Or Twitter. I'm really always online. So yeah,
What's your Twitter handle?
it's the same, Daisy Murray.
So,
So
so DASYMURI.
yep,
Okay,
DISY. Yep.
great. Anything else you'd like to share or ask?
I think no, that's it. I think always just continue coding, continue failing. It's not going to be perfect the first time you go for it. But just be persistent, man. You can do it.
Thanks, Daisy. It was great chatting with you. I appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you.